A stone giant guards secrets older than Egypt itself. The Great Sphinx of Giza, that iconic monument might be thousands of years older than any pharaoh. By the end of this, you will see this ancient wonder in a completely new light, its familiar story unraveled by evidence written not in hieroglyphs, but in stone and sky. We will examine how water may have carved its body long before the desert existed, and why its gaze might be locked on a constellation from a forgotten age. What does it mean for our history if this symbol of Egypt was already ancient when the pyramids were new? That timeline, placing the Sphinx around 4,500 years old, is a cornerstone of our history books. It is attributed to the pharaoh whose pyramid complex it seems to guard. The logic seems straightforward. The statue sits within its funerary precinct, and between its paws centuries later, known as the dream Stela, mentions his name. In this view, the Sphinx is a monumental self-portrait of the king, his human head wearing the royal headdress, attached to the powerful body of a lion. It represents the pharaoh as a living god, a guardian of the sacred plateau, a symbol of royal authority fused with the solar power of Ra. This narrative is elegant, satisfying, and fits neatly into our understanding of the Old Kingdom's golden age of pyramid building. It tells us the Sphinx is a product of a known civilization at the peak of its power. But what if the evidence supporting this story is not as solid as it appears? The cracks in this official narrative begin with the evidence itself. The primary link is circumstantial, based on location rather than a direct, contemporary inscription on the monument. The famous dream stela was erected by Pharaoh the fourth over 1,000 years after, is said to have ruled, telling a story of the Sphinx already buried in sand, a relic from a distant past even in his time. This is not a builder's signature. It is a later ruler restoring something ancient and mysterious. Furthermore, no texts or illustrations from his own era definitively mention or depict the carving of the Great Sphinx. For a monument of such staggering scale and importance, this silence is itself a whisper of a different story. The established timeline feels complete, yet it rests on assumptions that, when examined closely, reveal puzzling gaps. This invites a fundamental question. If the Sphinx does not perfectly fit the era we assigned it, could the stones themselves hold a different, much older memory? The stones of the Sphinx itself tell a story that directly contradicts the desert winds. Look closely at the massive limestone core of the statue, especially the deep, undulating, vertical channels carved into the walls of its surrounding pit. These are not the smooth, polished surfaces left by stone tools. This is the kind of weathering you see on ancient coastlines, where relentless waves have eaten away at cliffs over centuries. But the Sphinx is not by the sea. In the early 1990s, a geologist named Robert brought a scientist's eye to this puzzle. He concluded that this distinctive, rolling erosion could only have been caused by one thing: water. Not a flash flood, but thousands of years of heavy, consistent rainfall, water running down the walls in sheets, dissolving the softer limestone and carving those deep, vertical fissures. This presents an immense chronological problem. The climate of the Giza Plateau has been hyper-arid, a bone-dry desert, for at least the last 5,000 years, the entire span of recorded Egyptian history. To find the last period when the region experienced rainfall heavy enough and persistent enough to cause this type of erosion, you have to look back to what climatologists call the Neolithic. This was a time, ending roughly around 5000 BCE, when North Africa was a green savanna, a landscape of grasslands and seasonal rains, teeming with wildlife. If the Sphinx's body shows erosion from rainwater, then its earliest layers must have been exposed to the elements during that green Sahara era. That pushes its initial construction back to a staggering 7,000 years ago or more, a time before the first pharaoh, before hieroglyphs, before the concept of Egypt itself even existed. The implications of this water erosion hypothesis are profound. It suggests the Sphinx is not a creation of the pyramid builders, but a relic from a forgotten epoch, a monument that already stood, weathered and ancient, when architects first surveyed the plateau. The official story tells us it was carved from the bedrock around 2500 BCE. The stones, however, whisper of a birth under a different sky, one that wept rain onto a green land. This geological testimony forces us to confront a simple, unsettling question. What civilization, lost to the mists of prehistory, possessed the skill and the vision to shape such a colossus? And if they built the Sphinx, what else did they know that we have forgotten? Look at the Sphinx, and your eye is immediately drawn to that solemn, regal face. But shift your gaze downward to the immense, powerful body of a lion stretched out before it. Something feels off. The proportions do not quite match. The head, while monumental on its own, seems oddly small, almost delicate, perched atop that vast, weathered torso. It is like seeing a modern sculpture placed on a prehistoric plinth, two different scales and artistic visions forced together. This is not an illusion. Measured against the body, the human head is disproportionately small by as much as a third. In classical sculpture, harmony of proportion is everything, especially for a culture as masterful as the Old Kingdom Egyptians. They were geometric perfectionists, the architects of the pyramids. Would they have made such a fundamental error on their most iconic royal portrait? Or does this mismatch tell us that the head we see is not the one that was originally carved? The most compelling explanation is that the Sphinx we know is a remodeled monument. The theory suggests the original statue was a complete lion, a colossal guardian beast carved entirely from the bedrock. Its head, proportionate to that massive body, would have been a truly awe-inspiring sight, a lion's head gazing out across the plateau. This original form held profound astronomical meaning, aligning with the constellation Leo, the lion, which held a key position in the ancient sky. Then centuries or even later, a pharaoh arrived, perhaps standing before this ancient, weathered sentinel. Its original meaning may have been forgotten, its creators lost to time. But its power and its prime location were undeniable. So, instead of building a new monument, the decision was made to reclaim the old one. The existing lion's head, likely heavily eroded, was cut back, reshaped, and recarved into the pharaoh's own likeness, complete with the royal headdress. This was not creation, it was cultural appropriation on a monumental scale. The body, too large and too deeply set to alter easily, was left as it was, a lion's form now bearing a human face. This act of recarving solves the riddle of the odd proportions. It explains why the head seems like an afterthought, because in a very real sense it was. The smaller human head is what remained after the stonemasons shaved down the far larger original stone mass of the lion's head. You can almost see the join, the point where the finely detailed, layered stone of the headdress meets the more roughly weathered monolithic body. This is not the work of a single visionary artist, but of a later culture encountering a relic from a deep and unknown past and stamping their own identity onto it. If this theory holds, then every time we look at the Sphinx, we are seeing two monuments layered into one, a palimpsest in stone. The body whispers of an age when a lion ruled the plateau, its gaze fixed on the stars. The head proclaims the power of a pharaoh who found a giant from a forgotten world and made it his own. This forces us to wonder, what did that original lion see in a sky we have long since forgotten? The mismatched head and body point toward a sky forgotten by history. To understand what that original lion monument might have meant, we must look up, far beyond the desert sands, to the stars themselves. Astronomy offers a clue so precise it functions like a cosmic clock, one that may tell us not just the Sphinx's purpose, but its true birthday. This clue is called the precession of the equinoxes. It sounds complex, but the concept is a slow, majestic cycle. Imagine a spinning top that wobbles very slightly as it rotates. Our Earth does the same thing, its axis slowly tracing a giant circle in space over a period of about 26,000 years. This gradual wobble changes which constellation appears behind the sun at the moment of the spring equinox, that day of equal light and dark. Today, the sun rises in the constellation Pisces. 2,000 years ago, it was in Aries. This slow march of the sun through the zodiacal backdrop is precession. Now, apply this celestial clock to the Sphinx. If the monument was originally a complete lion, its eastward gaze would hold profound symbolic meaning. Some researchers, looking through this lens, propose a stunning alignment. They calculate that the last time the sun rose in the constellation Leo on the spring equinox was around 10,500 BCE. Picture that dawn. As the first light breaks over the horizon of a green Sahara, the colossal stone lion on the plateau stares directly toward the constellation of the Lion ascending in the pre-dawn sky. The earthly guardian and its celestial counterpart are united in a moment of perfect symbolic harmony. This is not a random coincidence. It is intentional architecture written in the language of the cosmos. A builder creating a lion monument at that specific time would naturally align it with its heavenly twin, creating a sacred map between earth and sky. This proposed date, 10,500 BCE, is astonishingly remote. It places the Sphinx's conception not just before the Pharaohs, but before the rise of any known civilization in the region, at the very tail end of the last ice age. This era is often whispered about in alternative history as a time when a lost, advanced culture might have flourished, only to be washed away by rising seas and climatic upheaval. The astronomical alignment weaves that tantalizing thread into the mystery. It suggests the builders possessed not only advanced stone working skill, but a sophisticated, long-term understanding of celestial mechanics, observing the slow dance of the stars over generations. The Sphinx, then, becomes more than a statue. It is a permanent marker, a stone footnote in a vast astronomical text meant to commemorate a specific epoch in our planet's great year. So we are left with a convergence of clues. The geology speaks of rainwater from a green Sahara. The proportions hint at a recarved lion, and the stars point to a date when the lion ruled the spring sky. Each piece of evidence from different disciplines seems to whisper the same incredible story. The Great Sphinx may be a message in stone, sent to us across a chasm of time so vast it challenges the very foundations of our historical narrative. If this is true, then who were the senders? What world did they inhabit? And what cataclysm compelled them to leave such a permanent, silent witness for a future they would never see? Standing silently beside the weathered giant are its forgotten companions. Directly in front of the Sphinx, and to its south, lie the ruins of two temples built from stones so massive they defy simple explanation. These are the Valley Temple and the Sphinx Temple, and their construction tells a story that is intricately tied to the monument itself. The most telling detail is not their size, though that is staggering, but the very skin of the stones. These temples are built from what geologists call core blocks, enormous limestone megaliths weighing up to 200 tons each, right from the Sphinx enclosure itself. They are literally pieces of the hole the statue was carved from, repurposed into architecture. And on their surfaces, They bear the exact same signature as the Sphinx enclosure walls, that distinctive, rolling, undulating erosion caused by thousands of years of rainwater runoff. This is a critical piece of evidence. When you look at later, confirmed Old Kingdom structures on the plateau, like the granite casing stones of Pyramid Temple, you see a different kind of wear. That is the sharper, more sandblasted pattern caused by wind and grit in a dry desert, a fingerprint of the arid climate we know has existed for. The temple blocks, however, show the older, water-worn fingerprint. This creates an undeniable link. The Sphinx and these megalithic temples were not only built from the same material, they were exposed to the same ancient weather. They weathered together as a single complex, under a sky that poured down rain season after season, century after century. This means the temples were not added later by a pharaoh-like. They were part of the original, unified vision, constructed at the same time as the Sphinx was first carved from the bedrock. Think of it as a single architectural event. First, workers excavated that huge horseshoe-shaped pit, carving out the central core that would become the lion's body. Then, they took the gigantic limestone blocks they had just removed, and with almost unimaginable effort, fitted them together like a colossal puzzle to build the sacred temples right there on the spot. The entire complex, statue and temples, was a single project, born from the same moment in deep time. This unity in erosion is a geological seal, locking the Sphinx and its temples into the same remote epoch. It transforms the site from a collection of monuments built over generations into a coherent snapshot, a single page frozen in stone from a chapter of history we have yet to fully read. If the temples, with their 200-ton blocks, are that old, then the civilization that orchestrated this feat was not primitive. They were masters of logistics, engineering, and astronomy, leaving behind not just a statue, but an entire sacred landscape. This raises a haunting possibility. What if the Great Sphinx is not the only messenger from that lost age, but merely the most obvious one? But what if a voice from ancient Egypt itself whispered this same story? Deep within the archives of discovery at Giza lies a peculiar artifact that does exactly that. It is called the inventory stela, and it was found in the 19th century near the remains of a temple dedicated to Isis, not far from the Great Sphinx. The stela itself is a slab of stone inscribed with hieroglyphs, and by its style, Egyptologists date its creation to the 26th dynasty. Around the 6th or 7th century BCE, that is a very late period in Egyptian history, long after the age of the pyramids. Yet the text it carries makes a claim that sends a shockwave through the conventional timeline. It states that the pharaoh Khufu, the father of and builder of the Great Pyramid, found the temple of the Sphinx already standing in ruins. According to this ancient document, Khufu did not build the temple or the statue, he discovered them. He then ordered repairs to be made to the monument, which the text poetically refers to as the guardian of the atmosphere. This is a direct, written assertion from an Egyptian source that the Sphinx complex predated the most famous pyramid builder of them all. Mainstream Egyptology often labels the inventory stela as a pious forgery, a later creation meant to glorify the past by linking a contemporary cult site to the legendary age of the Pyramid Kings. They argue that the language and certain details are anachronistic for the Old Kingdom. This is a valid scholarly critique. Yet, even if the physical stela was carved 2,000 years after Khufu lived, the story it tells is remarkably consistent with the other evidence piling up around the Sphinx. It presents a narrative where the monument is already ancient, already in need of restoration, during the very dynasty we believe created it. Why would a later priest invent a story that diminished the creative glory of the great Khufu, claiming he was merely a restorer and not a builder. A forgery meant to aggrandize would typically claim the opposite, that the revered king built something new and magnificent. The Stela's claim of mere restoration feels oddly humble, and that humility lends it a strange credibility. Think of it as an ancient historical record, a piece of folklore or temple tradition being committed to stone. The priests of the 26th dynasty may have been preserving an oral history passed down for generations, a memory that the Sphinx was a relic from a time before memory. The title they give it, Guardian of the Atmosphere, is hauntingly evocative. It speaks not of a pharaoh's power, but of a cosmic function, a being tasked with watching over the very sky and climate. A role that resonates deeply with the theories of astronomical alignment and a monument built during a different climatic age. So we are presented with a choice. We can dismiss the Stela as a fabrication, an outlier in the historical record. Or we can listen to what it says and notice how its story dovetails with the geology of water erosion, the architectural mismatch of the head and body, and the celestial alignment with Leo. It is as if a faint, crackling transmission from the past is repeating the same message being decoded by modern geologists and astronomers. This convergence is what makes the mystery so compelling. It is no longer just one fringe theory, but a chorus of disparate voices, from stone to stars to ancient text, all hinting at a timeline far more profound and mysterious than our textbooks allow. If the pyramid builders themselves saw the Sphinx as an antique, then who, in that unimaginable depth of time, were the true architects? This profound silence from the builders themselves is one of the mystery's most compelling arguments. In the world of ancient Egypt, a pharaoh's legacy was carved in stone for eternity. Grand construction projects were not just feats of engineering, they were divine propaganda, advertisements of a king's power meant to echo through the ages. Khufu stamped his name inside the Great Pyramid, left his mark on the valley temple bearing his name. Everywhere you look on the plateau, the pharaohs loudly proclaimed their ownership and their achievements. Yet on the Great Sphinx, the most visually dominant monument of them all, there is no such foundational inscription from the age of, no proud declaration, no royal cartouche, no relief showing its construction. For a king believed to have commissioned this masterpiece, this is a deafening, inexplicable silence. It would be as if the Statue of Liberty had no plaque, no dedication, nothing to tell us who built it or why. The only direct text we have comes from a much later pharaoh, the fourth, who ruled nearly 1,000 years after. His dream stela tells a fascinating story of the Sphinx speaking to him in a dream, but it carefully avoids naming its creator. It treats the monument not as a recent accomplishment, but as a venerable, already sun-buried deity from a distant past. This is not a builder's cornerstone, it is the plaque of a restorer. So we must ask, why would a ruler obsessed with securing his place in the afterlife leave his greatest sculptural achievement completely anonymous? The most logical answer is also the most revolutionary. Perhaps he did not claim it because he could not. Perhaps the Sphinx's origin was already so ancient, so shrouded in the mists of time by the 25th century BCE, that its true builder was unknown, a figure of legend. Its meaning may have been reinterpreted, its lion body given a human face to fit a new royal cult, but its foundational story was lost. In an empire that recorded everything, the absence of a record here speaks volumes. It suggests the Sphinx was not a project to be claimed, but a relic to be adopted, a powerful, pre-existing sentinel that a savvy pharaoh simply brought into his own narrative. This evidentiary gap is not a minor detail, it is a chasm at the heart of the standard theory. When you combine this historical silence with the geological testimony of water erosion and the astronomical alignment, a pattern emerges. Each piece points away from a known pharaoh and toward a forgotten epoch. The stones are weathered by a different climate, the stars align to a different age, and the historical record offers no contemporary voice to contradict them. Together, they weave a story not of creation, but of rediscovery. The difference is written directly onto the stones of the plateau. Walk from the deeply grooved enclosure of the Sphinx over to the Great Pyramid of Khufu, just a short distance away. You are stepping between two worlds, and the stone itself tells you so. Look at the limestone core blocks of the Great Pyramid, or the remaining granite casing stones at the base of the pyramid. Their surfaces tell a story of a harsh, dry environment. You see the pitting and flaking caused by relentless wind-blown sand, scouring the surface like sandpaper over centuries. You see cracks from the intense thermal stress of the desert, where stone expands in the blazing sun and contracts in the cool night, slowly fatiguing over. This is the expected weathering profile for monuments that have spent their entire 4,500-year existence in the hyper-arid climate we know so well. The edges, while worn, remain relatively sharp and defined. The degradation is superficial, a testament to time spent in a dry, windy desert. Now, turn your gaze back to the Sphinx enclosure. Here the story is completely different. The erosion is not a surface scouring, it is a deep, invasive carving. The limestone walls are marked by those distinctive, undulating vertical channels, some several feet deep, with rounded, flowing contours that look like cascades. This is subsurface dissolution, where water has seeped into the stone, dissolving the softer sedimentary layers and washing them away. This type of weathering requires one specific condition: prolonged and heavy precipitation. Wind and sand cannot create these deep, sinuous grooves, only thousands of years of rainwater runoff can. This creates an undeniable geological contradiction. Two sets of monuments, supposedly built within a century of each other by the same civilization, sitting on the same limestone plateau, show two entirely different and mutually exclusive weathering signatures. One shows the marks of a dry desert, the other bears the scars of a rainy savanna. They cannot both be correct if the monuments are the same age. The simplest, most logical scientific conclusion is that they are not. The pyramids have only ever known the dry Egyptian climate. The Sphinx, however, must have endured a much earlier, much wetter epoch, its stones exposed to the elements for a long enough period to acquire that deeply channeled profile before the desert returned and sealed its fate. This side-by-side comparison is perhaps the most visually powerful argument for the Sphinx's antiquity. It requires no complex astronomy or disputed translations, just your own eyes and a basic understanding of cause and effect. The stone does not lie. The Sphinx sat there, silently weathering under a forgotten sky, for so long that when the first pyramid builders arrived, they found a giant already ancient, its body shaped by a world that had vanished. This geological contradiction could not stand unchallenged. When geologist Robert first presented his water erosion hypothesis in the early 1990s, backed by the passionate research of writer John West, it did not just stir academic curiosity. It ignited a firestorm. Here was a scientist, armed with data from the stone itself, proposing a timeline that shattered the foundations of Egyptology. The response from mainstream scholars was swift and formidable, creating a debate that continues to echo through lecture halls and documentaries to this day. The core of their counterargument focused on alternative explanations for the Sphinx's unique wear. Could wind and sand over have produced those deep, vertical channels? Some experts argued that the limestone at Giza is naturally layered, with harder and softer bands. Over time, they suggested, wind-blown sand could selectively scour the softer layers, creating a simulacrum of water erosion. Others pointed to chemical weathering, where overnight dew, laden with salts from the nearby Nile, could seep into the stone and slowly dissolve it from within. Perhaps, they said, the rock's own porous nature, combined with rising groundwater or even the capillary action of salt crystallization, was the true sculptor. Each of these processes is real and can affect stone in a desert environment. The debate, therefore, became a meticulous forensic argument over cause and effect. Could these alternative mechanisms create the specific, deep, rounded, and undulating profiles seen in the enclosure? And his supporters maintained that only sustained, directional runoff from heavy rainfall could produce such features, and that the wind and dew theories failed to account for the sheer depth and pattern of the erosion. It was a classic clash of interpretations, with both sides examining the same evidence and seeing two different stories written in the rock. Beyond the geology, traditional Egyptologists raised a powerful, broader objection rooted in context. They argued that archaeology presents a clear, continuous picture of cultural development in the Nile Valley. The evidence shows a gradual evolution from simple Neolithic villages to the complex, unified state of the Old Kingdom. To propose a civilization advanced enough to quarry, move, and sculpt 200-ton blocks over 10,000 years ago, they insisted, is to insert a phantom chapter into history. Where are their cities, their tools, their pottery, their writings? The absence of any other archaeological trace of such a sophisticated pre-dynastic society is, for mainstream scholars, the most damning evidence against the older Sphinx theory. A civilization capable of such a project would have left more than a single, silent monument. This academic standoff is far more than a simple disagreement over dates. It highlights a profound tension between two ways of knowing the past. On one side, you have the hard, empirical data of interdisciplinary science, a reading of physical clues that points to an ancient climate event. On the other, you have the cultural and archaeological model, a framework built from decades of excavation and textual analysis that emphasizes continuity and gradual development. The geologist looks at the stone and sees a rainstorm. The archaeologist looks at the totality of human evidence and sees an impossibility. This unresolved debate is not a weakness in the investigation, but its very heart. It forces us to question our methods, our assumptions, and the stories we tell ourselves about human history. The Great Sphinx sits silently at the center of this intellectual whirlwind, its weathered face a riddle that challenges us to decide which language we trust more, the testimony of the earth, or the narrative we have pieced together from its fragments. The silent stones may hold one final, cryptic clue in their very skin. Beyond the debate over water or wind, a closer examination of the Sphinx enclosure reveals marks that tell a story of creation, of tools meeting rock. For the traditional timeline, the tools are well known. The Old Kingdom Egyptians were master stoneworkers using copper chisels, stone dolerite pounders, and abrasive sand. With these, they shaped the pyramids, the statues, and, we are told, the Sphinx. The evidence for this is robust and visible across Giza. You can see the characteristic, rough, pockmarked surfaces left by pounding stones on granite, and the sharper, linear grooves left by copper saws or chisels on softer limestone. This technology fits perfectly within our understanding of a Bronze Age civilization. But when some researchers direct their attention to specific areas of the Sphinx enclosure walls, particularly on the western end and the floor of the surrounding trench, They describe something that does not quite match that expected pattern. They point to long, parallel, and remarkably straight grooves or channels cut into the bedrock. These are not the random, impact-driven pits from pounding. They look more like the marks left by a tool making repeated, guided passes, almost as if something was dragged across the stone with immense, consistent pressure. The precision and linearity of these marks have fueled speculation. Could they be the signature of a different method? Some have even suggested they resemble marks left by large, mechanically powered cutting tools, an idea that immediately catapults the discussion into the controversial realm of lost or advanced ancient technology. This is a profound leap, and it demands extreme caution. Mainstream geology offers more conventional explanations, such as the natural fracturing of the limestone along its bedding planes, later exaggerated by erosion, or the possibility of much later Roman or even modern activity in the pit. Yet, the question lingers because of the sheer scale of the project itself. Consider the basic engineering feat. To create the Sphinx and its pit, its builders had to remove an estimated 200,000 tons of solid limestone. They did not simply carve a statue, they excavated a stadium-sized hole, moving the equivalent of a small mountain. With the known tools of copper and stone, this is a staggering but believable task of immense manpower and time. But if we entertain the possibility of a far older construction date, say 10,000 years ago, the logistical puzzle deepens. What society from that remote, pre-metallic era could organize and execute such a quarrying operation? The standard narrative provides a clear technological and social framework. An older Sphinx offers no such ready answers. It pushes the inquiry beyond mere dating into the mysterious realm of the builder's capabilities. Were they using a method we have simply not recognized? A sophisticated application of levers, water, and thermal shock that left few distinctive marks? Or does the presence of these unusual tool marks, if they are indeed ancient, hint at a forgotten chapter in human ingenuity? This line of questioning inevitably brushes against the edges of what we think we know about technological progress. It invites us to wonder if history is a straight line, or if it contains lost cycles where knowledge was gained, and then somehow washed away. The tool marks, whether from conventional pounders or something more enigmatic, are the final signatures of the artists. And if we cannot fully read that signature, then the true identity of the Sphinx's creator remains hidden, not just by time, but by the mystery of their own forgotten hands. A single, weathered monument points toward a civilization erased from our maps. If the Great Sphinx truly belongs to a time before the Pharaohs, before the pyramids, before recorded history itself, then a profound and haunting question demands an answer. Who built it? The silence of the archaeological record for that remote era has led many to look beyond conventional history, toward humanity's oldest and most persistent legends. The theory of a lost civilization emerges not from a vacuum, but from the sheer weight of the mystery. It proposes that the Sphinx is not an anomaly, but a surviving landmark from a forgotten chapter in the human story. Imagine a sophisticated culture thriving during the last ice age, a society with advanced knowledge of astronomy, engineering, and monumental construction. They would have witnessed a world very different from our own, with lower sea levels, different coastlines, and a climate that was shifting dramatically. According to this view, these ancient builders created the Sphinx as a permanent marker, a testament to their understanding of the cosmos and their place within its grand cycles. They may have aligned it with the constellation Leo to commemorate a specific epoch in Earth's great year, embedding a celestial timestamp in stone. Then, the theory suggests, a cataclysm occurred. The most common candidate is the dramatic climatic upheaval at the end of the last ice age, around 12,000 years ago, when melting ice caps caused global sea levels to rise rapidly, swallowing coastal lands and drastically changing weather patterns. Such an event could have fragmented this advanced society, scattering its people and reducing its grand achievements to ruins and memories. In this scenario, the Sphinx survived as a lone sentinel on a high plateau, while the civilization that carved it faded into myth. This narrative powerfully connects the geological and astronomical evidence to humanity's deepest ancestral stories. It finds echoes in the flood myths found in cultures across the globe, from the Epic of Gilgamesh to the story of Noah. Most famously, it resonates with the legend of Atlantis, described by the philosopher Plato as an advanced island nation that sank beneath the waves in a single day and night. Proponents of the lost civilization theory see the Sphinx as a potential piece of physical evidence for such a cataclysmic event, a monument built by that legendary culture or one like it. The theory also offers an elegant answer to another puzzle: the sudden and seemingly miraculous rise of Egyptian civilization. If a sophisticated precursor culture did exist, its scattered survivors, possessing fragments of lost knowledge, could have seeded that knowledge along the Nile Valley. This would explain the remarkable jump from simple Neolithic communities to the flawless geometry and astronomical precision of the Old Kingdom pyramids. The early Egyptians, in this view, were not inventing from scratch, but inheriting and adapting a legacy from a much older world. They encountered the already ancient Sphinx, reinterpreted its meaning, recarved its head, and built their own civilization in the shadow of its mystery. While this idea is captivating, it is important to recognize its highly speculative nature. Mainstream archaeology requires tangible evidence, cities, tools, writings, and there is no conclusive proof of a globe-spanning advanced civilization from that era. The theory operates in the space where hard evidence meets intuitive interpretation, where a single, massive outlier monument inspires a complete reimagining of the past. Yet its power lies in its attempt to answer the fundamental human questions raised by the Sphinx's possible antiquity. It addresses the who and the why. It transforms the statue from a royal portrait into a memorial, a warning, or a message in a bottle from a world that vanished beneath the rising seas and shifting sands. Whether fact or profound metaphor, the lost civilization theory reminds us that history may be far deeper and more mysterious than our records suggest. It challenges us to consider that our story might not be a straight line of progress, but a spiral with cycles of growth, cataclysm, and rebirth. The Sphinx, then, becomes more than an archaeological puzzle. It is a symbol of human resilience and the fragile nature of our achievements, a silent guardian keeping watch over the ruins of time itself. The mystery of the Sphinx does not stand alone. Travel hundreds of miles south from Giza to the sacred site of, and you will find another monument that whispers the same ancient story. This is a sunken, megalithic temple dedicated to the god Osiris, lord of the underworld and resurrection. At first glance, it seems to belong to the era of the New Kingdom Pharaoh Seti I, who ruled around 1300 BCE. His magnificent temple complex stands right beside it. But step down into the central hall, and the familiar world of Egyptian architecture dissolves. You are surrounded by a forest of gigantic, red granite pillars, each one a single, solid block weighing over 100 tons. The walls are built from similarly massive blocks, fitted together with a stark, minimalist precision. There are no colorful reliefs, no intricate hieroglyphs covering every surface. The style is brutally functional, cyclopean, an architecture of raw power rather than detailed ornamentation. This is not the artistic language of Seti's time. It feels older, more primal, and strangely out of place. Even more telling is the condition of the stone. The lower courses of this granite show clear, deep weathering, a pattern of erosion that, just like the Sphinx enclosure, appears to be the work of water. The surfaces are rounded, pitted, and worn, as if they were submerged or subjected to long periods of saturation. This presents the same chronological puzzle. This sits in a desert region that has been arid for its granite blocks to show this type of water where they must have been exposed to a very different climate, one with significant groundwater or flooding, long before Seti the first ever drew a plan. The conventional explanation is that the is a cenotaph, a symbolic tomb built by Seti in an intentionally archaic style to honor the ancient god Osiris. Mainstream archaeology points to pottery fragments and stylistic links to place its construction in his reign. Yet, for those who see a deeper pattern, the parallels to Giza are too striking to ignore. Both sites feature megalithic core structures built with blocks of a scale that dwarfs later pharaonic works. Both show weathering consistent with prolonged water exposure from a remote, rainier epoch. And both are awkwardly attached to later, more refined temples from a known dynastic period. This has led some researchers to a radical proposal. What if like the core body of the Sphinx, is not an imitation of antiquity, but the real thing? They suggest these are surviving fragments of a pre-dynastic building phase, a forgotten architectural tradition that employed a technology of moving and shaping 100-ton stones. A technology that was later lost or abandoned. The later pharaohs, encountering these mysterious, half-buried ruins, simply built their own temples around and above them, incorporating the ancient, sacred sites into their own religious narratives. Seti did not build this megalithic core, he discovered it and claimed it for his god. This connection transforms a single anomaly into a potential pattern. It suggests that scattered across Egypt, buried beneath the sands or incorporated into later monuments, may be the fingerprints of a much older civilization. A culture that worked stone on a gargantuan scale and whose monuments endured a climatic shift from wet to dry. The Sphinx is then not a lone sentinel, but perhaps the most visible member of a lost family. If this is true, then every time we admire the polished perfection of a pyramid or a New Kingdom temple, we might be looking at the second chapter of a story whose first pages were written in a forgotten language of stone, a language spoken under a sky that wept rain onto a green and very different land. But the mystery does not end at the sand's surface. Legends speak of a hidden world beneath the Sphinx's massive paws. For centuries, stories have circulated about tunnels, secret chambers, and lost libraries buried deep under the monument. In the 1930s, the American mystic Edgar gave these tales a modern form. During a trance state, he described a hidden chamber called the Hall of Records. He claimed it lay beneath the Sphinx's right paw, a time capsule containing the lost wisdom of Atlantis, sealed away by that advanced civilization before its fall. This captivating vision, though rooted in psychic readings rather than archaeology, captured the public imagination and framed the ultimate question: what if something is actually down there? Modern science has added intriguing, if ambiguous, data to these ancient rumors. Ground-penetrating radar surveys conducted around the Sphinx have, at various times, indicated anomalies beneath the surface. These scans suggest the presence of cavities or spaces within the bedrock, areas where the stone density changes. Researchers have pointed to possible tunnels leading from the rear of the monument and intriguing rectangular shapes beneath the front paws. These are not definitive discoveries of rooms, but they are compelling signatures that something man-made or naturally formed, but hollow, may exist below. The Egyptian authorities have acknowledged small cavities and tunnels, some likely dug by treasure hunters in antiquity or by researchers in the 19th century. Yet the possibility of a larger, sealed, and untouched space remains a powerful lure. The scientific and historical implications are staggering. An undisturbed chamber could contain the ultimate evidence. Imagine artifacts, tools, or even inscriptions left by the original builders, materials that could be carbon dated or stylistically analyzed to provide a concrete date far removed from the dynastic era. It could hold the key that finally deciphers the Sphinx's true age and purpose. This prospect is what drives continued interest and speculation. It represents the chance for a clear answer, a message in a bottle not just from a lost time, but from beneath the very monument that guards their secret. The reality, however, is one of strict control and preservation. The Supreme Council of Antiquities in Egypt carefully guards access to such sites, prioritizing the monument's stability over exploratory digging that could cause damage. The idea of a grand, cinematic excavation beneath the pause is unlikely without overwhelming evidence and the most meticulous planning. So the subsurface remains the final frontier of this mystery. The legends of a hall of records may be metaphorical, but the geological hints of hollow spaces are tantalizingly real. They remind us that the Sphinx is not just a statue above ground, but potentially the capstone of a deeper, hidden structure. Until those shadows on a radar screen are ever explored, the most conclusive answers to the Sphinx's age may lie sleeping in the dark, just beneath our feet. Waiting for the day the sand finally gives up its oldest secret, the lion's image roars across cultures and as a primal emblem of raw, untamed authority. In the ancient world, from Mesopotamia to the Mediterranean, the lion was not merely a powerful animal, it was a living symbol of the sun's fierce heat, of royal strength, and of vigilant guardianship over sacred spaces. A colossal stone lion gazing eastward would have been a profound statement, a declaration written in geology. It would have represented a fusion of celestial and earthly rule, the constellation Leo made manifest on the plateau to watch over the land. Its power was not tied to a single human dynasty, but to the eternal cycles of the cosmos itself. This universal symbolism makes the act of ray carving not just a renovation, but a profound act of cultural and political strategy. Imagine a new ruler, Pharaoh, ascending to power. Before him stands this weathered, immense lion, a monument of such obvious antiquity and power that its origins are lost to legend. It is already a sacred focal point, a place where the divine has touched the earth for generations untold. To build a new statue nearby would be to compete with this existing giant. But to claim it, to literally reshape its identity, by having his own visage carved onto that ancient body, performs a symbolic merger. He is not just building his legacy, he is grafting his reign directly onto the root of a deeper, older authority. He becomes the living inheritor of the lion's solar power and its role as eternal guardian. This transforms the monument from a timeless celestial symbol into a very specific political tool. The Sphinx becomes a billboard for divine kingship, telling every subject that their pharaoh is not merely a man, but the latest incarnation of a force that has watched over the land since the world was young. The mismatched proportions we see today are the direct physical evidence of this symbolic takeover. The smaller human head is what fits after the original, larger mass of the lion's head was cut away. This was not an artistic error, it was a necessary compromise in a project of ideological rebranding. The body, too massive to alter, remained as a lion, forever anchoring the statue to its original, wilder meaning. So we are left with a monument of layered intent. The lion's body whispers of an age when humanity aligned itself with the raw forces of nature and the stars. The pharaoh's head proclaims the calculated power of a state religion, a civilization that sought to channel those ancient forces into the service of a single god king. This symbolic transformation provides the perfect narrative bridge between the evidence of great age and the historical presence of the pharaohs. It explains why would invest in restoring and modifying the Sphinx instead of simply building his own. He was not just carving stone, he was stitching his new dynasty into the very fabric of a forgotten past, using the most powerful symbol he could find to cement his rule in both heaven and earth. The story of the Sphinx is written not just in stone, but in the very climate of the land that cradles it. To truly grasp the force that may have shaped its weathered body, we must step back and witness the dramatic transformation of the Sahara itself. This vast sea of sand was not always a desert. For thousands of years, it wore a completely different face. Between roughly 10,000 and 5,000 years ago, a climatic chapter known as the African Humid Period unfolded. The North African landscape was a green and vibrant savanna, a mosaic of grasslands, scattered trees, and shimmering lakes. Rivers flowed where now there are only dry wadis, and seasonal rains were a regular, life-giving force. This was a world populated by giraffes, elephants, and antelope, a thriving ecosystem sustained by a much wetter climate. This era provides the essential, natural stage for the water erosion hypothesis. If the core body of the Sphinx was exposed to the elements during this Green Sahara epoch, it would have been subjected to exactly the kind of persistent, heavy rainfall needed to carve those deep, vertical channels into its limestone core. The water had both the time and the intensity to do its work, season after season, century after century. Then, the stage changed. Around 5,000 years ago, the climate began a slow, inexorable shift. The rains diminished, the grasslands retreated, and the lakes dried up. By about 3000 BCE, the transformation was largely complete. The green savanna had given way to the hyper-arid desert we recognize today, a landscape defined by wind, sand, and blistering sun. This paleoclimatic timeline is not speculation. It is a well-documented record drawn from lake sediments, fossil pollen, and cave formations. It provides the crucial environmental backdrop that makes the geological argument not just possible, but profoundly plausible. The Sphinx's distinctive erosion pattern is a fossil of that forgotten weather. It is a geological snapshot, capturing the moment when the last consistent rains fell on the Giza Plateau. This alignment is precise and telling. The proposed older dates for the Sphinx's initial exposure, suggested by the erosion, fit neatly within that window of a wetter Sahara. The monument's deepest weathering tells a story of a green world, a story that ended long before the first pharaoh laid a foundation stone. This grounding in Earth's own natural history moves the discussion from pure mystery into the realm of environmental evidence. It asks us to listen to the testimony of the planet itself, a testimony that speaks of a radical change in the sky above the stones. If the Sphinx bears the marks of that ancient rain, then it stands as a silent witness to a lost world, a monument that watched the green fade to gold and the rivers vanish into dust. That silent witness to a changing climate has become a cornerstone for a sweeping reimagining of human history. While geologists and archaeologists debate the evidence, another conversation has unfolded in the public square, one that connects the Sphinx to a story of global catastrophe and forgotten wisdom. This narrative has been championed by authors like Graham and Robert, whose work has propelled the older Sphinx theory from academic journals into living rooms around the world. They take the geological and astronomical clues and weave them into a grand, epic tapestry. In their view, the Sphinx is not an isolated anomaly, but a key piece of a global puzzle. They propose that a sophisticated mother culture, an advanced civilization, thrived during the last ice age. This society possessed profound knowledge of astronomy, architecture, and perhaps even spiritual truths, and they left their mark on sacred sites across the planet. Then, around 10,500 BCE, a cataclysmic event occurred, most likely the comet impacts and climatic chaos linked to the Younger Dryas period. This global disaster shattered that civilization, sinking its coastal cities and scattering its survivors. The Sphinx, aligned with the constellation Leo from that precise era, becomes a memorial, a time capsule built by the survivors or their descendants as a warning and a beacon for a future age. And others then draw breathtaking connections. They see the same astronomical codes and megalithic fingerprints at places like, in Turkey, the pyramids of Mexico, and the ancient temples of Peru. The Sphinx in this framework is a single node in a vast, prehistoric network, all pointing back to a common source, a lost chapter in the human story that conventional archaeology has missed. This vision is undeniably compelling. It offers a singular, dramatic answer to the Sphinx's mysteries and gives profound meaning to its possible antiquity. It transforms the monument from a lonely sentinel into a character in an epic saga of rise, fall, and legacy. Unsurprisingly, this narrative has faced fierce criticism from the academic mainstream. Scholars argue that it relies on selective evidence, leaps of logic, and a disregard for the established, gradual timeline of human cultural development. They point out the lack of any concrete archaeological proof for such a globe-spanning civilization. No cities, no tools, no economic infrastructure beneath the layers of time. The connections drawn between disparate sites, they say, are often based on superficial similarities or forced astronomical alignments that ignore local context and development. The debate, therefore, exists in a tense and fascinating space. On one side is inspired, big-picture speculation that seeks patterns across continents and on the other is rigorous, discipline-specific science that builds knowledge painstakingly from the ground up. The Sphinx sits at the very center of this tension. It acts as a powerful focal point, a monument so enigmatic that it naturally invites grand theories. The work of alternative historians, regardless of its scientific acceptance, has performed a crucial service. It has ignited the public imagination and forced a much wider audience to question the official story. It has made people look at the Sphinx and wonder not just when it was built, but why it feels so ancient, so out of place, so laden with a gravity that mere centuries cannot explain. This popular discourse demonstrates that the monument's greatest power may not be in providing answers, but in persistently asking the most profound questions about our origins. It challenges us to consider whether our past is a simple, linear progression or a more complex story with missing pages. Pages that might have been written in a language of stone and stars we are only beginning to decipher. This layered history of repair adds another dimension to the mystery. The Great Sphinx has not simply endured the ages, it has been repeatedly rescued from them, buried and reborn in cycles that stretch from antiquity to the present day. Its most famous rescuer was the New Kingdom Pharaoh IV. According to the dream Stela he placed between its paws, the young prince, resting in the shadow of the buried statue, was promised the throne in a dream if he cleared away the encroaching sand. He did, and his restoration secured the Sphinx as a site of royal devotion. But his work was just one chapter. Over the centuries, the desert has reclaimed its guardian again and again, with major restoration efforts recorded in the Roman era and most extensively in modern times. Each intervention was an act of preservation, a labor of love and duty to save a cultural icon from crumbling into dust. Yet, each layer of new stone and mortar also acts as a veil. These repairs, essential for the monument's survival, have patched over the original, weathered surface of the Sphinx's core body. The restorers used different types of limestone, from different places and times, and bound them with their own period's mortar recipes. To a geologist's eye, this creates a complex palimpsest. The most critical evidence, the untouched surface of the original limestone that holds the unaltered story of its erosion, is often hidden behind these well-intentioned facades. Studying the Sphinx's weathering is like trying to read an ancient manuscript that has been written over, its oldest and most faded ink concealed beneath newer, clearer text. The modern era has seen the most aggressive restoration campaigns, particularly in the 1980s and 90s, when hundreds of new limestone blocks were added to the statue's severely eroded chest and paws. While these efforts halted its decay, they also covered vast sections of the original stone. This presents a profound scientific dilemma. The very acts that saved the Sphinx for future generations have also made it harder to answer the fundamental questions about its past. The cleanest geological signals, the ones that could potentially settle the debate between water erosion and wind erosion, are now encased in a shell of newer rock. Researchers must now rely on older photographs, drawings, and exposed sections that were documented before major restorations, or painstakingly analyze the few areas where the ancient core is still visible. This history teaches us that the monument we see today is a collaboration across, a dialogue between the original, unknown sculptors and every generation that followed, determined to keep their legacy standing. Each layer of repair, while masking evidence, is itself a testament to the Sphinx's enduring power. It tells us that regardless of its true age, humanity has looked upon this stone giant for thousands of years and felt the same irresistible pull to protect it. To ensure its silent gaze continues into an uncertain future, the stones of the Sphinx may hold one more secret, one that is not seen but heard. Beyond the visual clues of erosion and alignment, some researchers have turned their attention to the very air within the enclosure, to the way sound behaves in that carved space. Anecdotal accounts from visitors and investigators over the years describe unusual acoustic phenomena. In certain spots, a whisper can seem to carry with unnatural clarity, or a specific tone might produce a deep, resonant hum that seems to emanate from the stone itself. The hard, smooth limestone surfaces of the pit and the massive, closely spaced walls of the adjacent temples could potentially create standing waves or focused echoes, amplifying and coloring sound in unexpected ways. These reports are, for now, largely informal observations rather than rigorously mapped scientific data. Yet, they open a fascinating line of inquiry. If these acoustic properties were not a happy accident of geology, but a deliberate feature of the design, the implications are profound. It would suggest the original builders possessed an intuitive or even calculated understanding of sound physics. They would have been shaping not just a visual monument, but an auditory environment. Imagine a ceremony taking place within that sunken courtyard. Chanting, drumming, or the playing of specific instruments could have been designed to interact with the space, to create vibrations felt in the chest, to induce specific states of awareness, or to make a priest's voice seemed to issue from the stone itself. This transforms the Sphinx complex from a static sculpture into an instrument, a site of engineered experience where architecture, ritual, and sensory perception were woven together. Such a concept aligns with what we know of other ancient cultures who harnessed acoustics, like the whispering galleries in certain cathedrals or the resonant chambers in prehistoric burial mounds. It points to a holistic design philosophy where every element, from celestial alignment to the behavior of sound waves, was part of a unified sacred science. While this acoustic dimension offers no direct proof of the Sphinx's age, it adds a compelling layer of sophistication to the portrait of its creators. It hints at a culture that thought in sensory terms, for whom a monument was not complete unless it could also speak or sing to those who stood within its shadow. This possibility invites us to listen more closely, not just to the theories about the Sphinx, but to the silent stones themselves, wondering what forgotten frequencies they were meant to amplify. And what messages might still linger in the echoes of a space built for a purpose we can only begin to sense. The written word of ancient Egypt is a chorus of names, deeds, and prayers, yet one voice remains conspicuously quiet. In the vast library of texts from the Old Kingdom, the era supposedly responsible for its creation, the Great Sphinx receives no clear mention. There are no proud inscriptions from the court of celebrating its completion, no administrative papyri detailing the logistics of its carving, no hymns that name it as a new wonder of the world. For a civilization that meticulously recorded everything from grain harvests to royal decrees, this silence is a historical whisper of immense significance. It suggests the monument was not an event to be recorded, but a fact of the landscape, a permanent feature whose origins were already lost to the scribes who wrote the first chapters of Egyptian history. Later myths and religious texts offer only faint, ambiguous echoes. In the epic struggle between the gods Horus and Set, symbols of order and chaos, there are guardians and powerful beasts, but none are definitively this specific statue on the Giza Plateau. The Egyptians did have a word for a sphinx, Ankh, which beautifully translates to living image. This term, however, was a general descriptor for a statue imbued with divine spirit, not a unique title for the giant at Giza. It could be applied to many royal sculptures meant to house a ka, or life force. This linguistic generality further clouds the waters. The most famous sphinx in the world seems to have been, in the eyes of its own cultural heirs, simply one powerful living image among many. Its individual story, either too ancient or too well known to require writing down. This textual scarcity transforms from a simple absence of data into a profound clue. When a culture as literate and proud as dynastic Egypt does not formally claim the genesis of its most iconic monument, it begs a question. Was the story of its creation not recorded because it was a contemporary achievement, or because it was a pre-existing truth, a piece of oral tradition so old it had moved beyond written history? The later pharaohs clearly revered it. They built temples in its honor, cleared it from the sand, and likely recarved its face. But they behaved as stewards and restorers, not original architects claiming a fresh triumph. Their texts speak of renewal, not foundation. Thus, the search through Egypt's own literary tradition leads us not to an answer, but to a deeper layer of the mystery. The written record does not contradict the idea of an older Sphinx, it subtly supports it. By offering no birth certificate, the texts allow the monument to exist in a timeless space, an eternal living image that simply always was. This pushes its true origins back into the realm of legend, a story told not on papyrus, but in the very stones and the alignment of the stars, a story that the pyramid builders themselves may have only inherited, and in their awe, chose to preserve rather than explain. Geological interpretation is a careful art of reading the stories stone tells, and not all experts read the same tale from the Sphinx's weathered skin. To truly weigh the debate, we must listen closely to the counter-arguments, the alternative explanations that seek to anchor the monument firmly within the age of the pharaohs. Some geologists point to a process known as exfoliation. In the harsh desert environment, the limestone endures extreme temperature swings, blistering hot by day and surprisingly cool at night. This constant expansion and contraction, they suggest, stresses the rock. Combine that with moisture from dew or rare rain, which draws salts from the stone to its surface. As these salts crystallize, they can push tiny grains apart, causing the softer layers of limestone to flake away over centuries, creating a weathered appearance that might, from a distance, resemble water channels. This is a real and documented form of decay in arid climates. The question is one of scale and pattern. Could this slow, granular process produce the deep, vertical, and rounded grooves we see, rather than a more general, surface-level crumbling? Another counterpoint focuses not on daily weathering, but on rare, catastrophic events. Proponents of the conventional timeline acknowledge that heavy rain does occasionally fall on Giza, even in its desert state. They propose that over 4,500 years, a series of exceptionally powerful rainstorms, perhaps linked to brief climatic shifts, could have generated enough runoff to carve those features. The occasional deluge, funneling water down the walls of the enclosure, might have done the work over, bit by dramatic bit. This argument hinges on the cumulative power of intermittent events rather than a sustained, rainy epoch. Additionally, these geologists emphasize the natural composition of the plateau's limestone. It is not a uniform block, but a layered cake of harder and softer sedimentary rock. Differential erosion, where water or wind attacks the softer bands more aggressively, could naturally create undulating, channel-like patterns as the weaker stone retreats faster than the stronger stone beside it. In this view, the Sphinx's distinctive grooves are not a climate archive, but a testament to the rock's own inherent weaknesses, exaggerated by time and the elements. These alternative hypotheses serve a crucial purpose. They remind us that geology is rarely a field of single, obvious answers. The same set of marks in the rock can often support multiple, equally plausible stories depending on the interpreter's focus. The scientists who favor these explanations are not dismissing the evidence. They are offering a different framework to understand it, one that keeps the Sphinx's construction within the known. Prosperous era of the Old Kingdom. Their work underscores a fundamental principle, that in the absence of a clear, contemporary inscription, we are left interpreting physical clues, and those clues can be as layered and complex as the limestone itself. This scientific dialogue, this respectful clash of interpretations, is not a weakness in the search for truth, but its very engine. It forces every side to sharpen their evidence, to look closer, and to remain humble before the silent, inscrutable witness of the past. This absence of a builder's society is the theory's most formidable challenge. If a civilization advanced enough to create the Sphinx existed over 10,000 years ago, where is everything else? Where are their cities, their tools, their pottery, their art? The archaeological record of the Nile Valley before the first pharaohs, known as the pre-dynastic period, reveals a fascinating but very different story. We see the gradual development of farming communities, skilled in crafting fine pottery, simple jewelry, and mud brick architecture. These were sophisticated cultures in their own right, like the people who laid the social and economic foundations for the Egyptian state. Yet, nothing in their material remains suggests a leap to megalithic engineering. There are no quarries for 200-ton blocks, no remnants of the complex administrative systems needed to feed and direct a workforce of thousands. No precursor carvings that evolved toward the form of a sphinx. The iconography of a lion-human hybrid does not appear until the dynastic era itself. This creates a stark disconnect. The proposed older Sphinx implies a society with the organizational power of the Old Kingdom, but existing earlier, in a time frame archaeology associates with village life and regional chiefdoms. It is like finding a modern skyscraper in the middle of a medieval farming village, with no blueprints, no construction equipment, and no historical mention of the builders ever having lived there. For mainstream Egyptology, this missing cultural context is not just a gap, it is a canyon. The discipline is built on a careful, stratified record of human development, where technological and social complexity grows over time, leaving layers of evidence. A 10,000-year-old Sphinx would stand as a solitary, inexplicable peak in a landscape that otherwise shows only gentle hills. So the question becomes unavoidable. If such a culture existed, why did it leave only one colossal signature and then vanish without a trace? Proponents of the older Sphinx theory offer several possibilities, each stretching our imagination. One suggests the builders were not a permanent, large-scale civilization in the Nile Valley as we understand it. They might have been a specialized, perhaps even itinerant, group with advanced knowledge of astronomy and stoneworking, who came to the Giza Plateau for a specific, sacred purpose, built their marker, and then moved on or disbanded. Their home base could have been elsewhere, perhaps on coastlines now submerged by rising seas at the end of the last ice age. This idea connects to those global flood myths, where the heartlands of an early culture were lost beneath the waves, leaving only their highland outposts like Giza as cryptic clues. Another explanation considers the fragility of evidence over such vast timescales. 10,000 years is an almost unimaginable depth of time. In a green, wet Sahara, structures made of mud, brick, or even most stone would have been vulnerable to erosion, flooding, and the relentless reclaiming force of vegetation. If their primary settlements were in what is now the hyper-arid desert, the shifting sands could have buried them utterly, or the returning desertification itself might have destroyed their remains. The Sphinx survived because it was carved from the living bedrock itself, a part of the plateau rather than a structure built upon it. Its companions, the megalithic temples, also endure because of their insane scale. The smaller, more delicate artifacts of daily life, the homes, the workshops, the written records if they had any, could have simply turned to dust. This is a haunting notion, that an entire chapter of human endeavor could be erased by time and climate, leaving behind only the most stubborn, monumental sentences. Yet, even this reasoning asks for a significant leap of faith. It requires us to accept that a society capable of such a project left no cultural imprint on the populations that followed, no legends strong enough to be accurately recorded, no technological seeds that clearly sprouted later. The silence is profound. This archaeological objection forces us to a crossroads. Either we dismiss the geological and astronomical clues because the cultural evidence is missing, or we reconsider what that missing evidence might mean. Perhaps the story of human civilization is not a single, continuous ascent, but a series of experiments, some of which flourished and then faded. Their greatest works standing as lonely riddles for the survivors who came after. The Sphinx in this light is not just a statue, but a question mark carved in stone, challenging us to wonder what else from our deep past might lie hidden, not under the sand. but in the blind spots of our own understanding, yet the stars offer more than a single story. While the alignment with the constellation Leo captures the imagination, it is not the only celestial map proposed for the Sphinx. Look at its placement on the plateau. The statue sits in an almost perfect east-west orientation, its body aligned along that axis. This is no accident of geology. An east-west alignment points directly to the rising and setting sun on the equinoxes, those 2 days of balance between light and dark. For any culture attuned to the heavens, this would be a foundational orientation, marking the solar year's turning points. It grounds the monument in a solar, cyclical time, independent of the slow procession of the constellations, but other cosmic patterns beckon. Some researchers have looked to the belt of Orion, a constellation deeply woven into Egyptian mythology as the celestial form of the god Osiris. They search for correlations between the positions of the pyramids and the stars of Orion's belt, wondering if the Sphinx, as guardian, plays a role in that larger celestial diagram. Others propose alignments with specific bright stars like Sirius, whose heliacal rising heralded the Nile's life-giving flood, an event central to Egyptian life and religion. Each of these theories paints a different picture of the builder's intent. Was the Sphinx a marker for the age of Leo, a solar sentinel for the equinoxes, or part of a grander star map honoring the gods of resurrection and renewal? The debate over its exact intentionality is fierce because the evidence is written in a language we are still learning to read. This very uncertainty, however, reveals a deeper truth. If the Sphinx is far older than dynastic Egypt, then the astronomical knowledge of its original builders may have been fundamentally different from that of the pharaohs who later adopted it. The celestial target they aimed for could belong to a forgotten star lore, a system of meaning that faded when the climate changed and their culture passed from memory. Later Egyptians, inheriting the monument, would have naturally interpreted its powerful alignments through their own mythological lens, seeing Orion or Sirius where the builders may have seen another pattern entirely. This exploration of multiple alignments does not weaken the mystery, it enriches it. It suggests the Sphinx may hold several layers of cosmic meaning, each corresponding to a different chapter of its immense life. The first layer, carved by the original builders, could point to a specific precessional age, like Leo, or to a solar event lost to us. Centuries or later, a new culture arrives, studies the same silent giant under a shifted sky, and overlays their own astronomical understanding, seeing their gods in its gaze. The monument becomes a palimpsest of the heavens, a stone book recording humanity's changing relationship with the cosmos. So perhaps the question is not which alignment is correct, but how many are true. The Sphinx, in its stubborn silence, may be refusing to give a single answer because its story is not a solitary fact, but a symphony of time, where each era heard the music of the spheres in a different key, and left its own note in the enduring stone. Deep within the oldest pyramids, the walls themselves speak. These are the pyramid texts, a sprawling collection of spells and incantations carved in stone to guide the pharaoh's soul through the perilous journey to the afterlife. They are humanity's oldest surviving religious writings, composed at the very end of the Old Kingdom, the same dynasty credited with building the Sphinx. In their poetic, cryptic verses, we find a universe of celestial boats, star gods, and solar barks sailing through the dark waters of the night. Scholars have combed through every line of these ancient texts, searching for a clear, direct mention of the great stone guardian on the plateau. The result is a fascinating silence. The name Sphinx does not appear. There is no explicit description of its carving or its dedication. Yet, to stop there would be to miss the forest for the trees. The texts are not a historical record, they are a map of a mythological landscape, and within that landscape, the role of the Sphinx seems to already be assumed, already waiting. Look at the recurring imagery. There are powerful guardians at the gates of the horizon, ferocious lion deities, who protect the path of the sun god Ra as he is reborn each dawn. The texts speak of the place of the horizon, which is not just a line in the distance, but a sacred threshold between the world of the living and the realm of the gods. It is described as a junction, a mound, a place of powerful transition. Now step back and look at the physical Sphinx. It sits precisely at the edge of the Giza Plateau, its body aligned east-west, its gaze fixed directly at the horizon where the sun rises on the equinox. It is not just near the horizon, it is the horizon, a man-made cliff marking that sacred junction. It is the ultimate guardian at the gateway of the sunrise. This is not a coincidence of words and stone, it is a profound resonance. The pyramid texts give voice to a spiritual concept, and the Sphinx provides its physical, monumental form. The fact that the texts do not need to describe or name the statue might be the most telling clue of all. It suggests that by the time these words were first carved inside a pyramid, the idea of a great lion guardian at the solar gateway was already an ancient, ingrained part of the Egyptian soul. The monument on the plateau was not an inspiration for the texts, but perhaps their most powerful existing manifestation. The texts in writing a belief system that the Sphinx had already been embodying in stone, possibly for centuries or even. This literary echo points toward a deep, pre-existing tradition. It allows for a compelling possibility that the Sphinx was already there, a primordial sentinel from a forgotten age. And the priests of the Old Kingdom simply wove its overwhelming presence into their new theological writings. They saw a lion facing the sunrise and recognized in it the perfect symbol for their own solar theology, a ready-made piece of sacred architecture that fit their cosmic vision as if it had been designed for it. Perhaps it was. The silence of the pyramid text, then, is not an absence of evidence, but a different kind of testimony. It tells us that the Sphinx's symbolic power was so fundamental, so woven into the fabric of their worldview, that it required no explanation. It was simply there, as eternal as the horizon it watched over, a silent participant in every spell for rebirth ever uttered in the shadow of the pyramids. The ground beneath the Sphinx has not always been still. The Giza Plateau rests within a broader region that has experienced seismic activity for a slow, grinding conversation of tectonic plates far below the surface. Earthquakes, even moderate ones, deliver a unique kind of violence to ancient stone. Unlike the gradual caress of wind or the persistent drip of water, a quake delivers a sudden, jarring shock. This force can fracture bedrock along hidden fault lines, cause entire sections of stone to subside or settle unevenly, and shake loose, already weakened material. For a monument like the Sphinx, carved from the living rock and surrounded by a deep trench, seismic shaking presents a profound threat to its structural integrity. It could explain deep cracks in the core body or odd patterns of collapse that don't neatly fit a narrative of simple weathering. This introduces a crucial complication in the detective work. When we look at the monument's damaged state, we are not looking at a single signature, but a layered palimpsest of destruction. Is a particular fissure the result of ancient rainwater seeping into a crack and freezing, or was it born in a moment of violent shaking centuries later? The erosion we see is likely a compound effect, a collaboration of antagonists over time. Water may have carved the initial, deep channels during a wet epoch. Then, as the climate dried, wind-blown sand scoured and smoothed those channels further. All the while, The brutal thermal cycle of the desert expanded and contracted the stone, fatiguing it. And occasionally, the earth itself would tremble, delivering a catastrophic blow that accelerated the decay. This confluence of forces makes the Sphinx an incredibly challenging clock to read. Each natural process leaves its own mark, but over thousands of years, those marks overlap, obscure, and amplify one another. A geologist must become a forensic analyst, trying to separate the evidence of water from the evidence of quakes, and both from the constant background noise of wind and sun. This complexity is why the debate continues. It is not that one side ignores evidence, but that the same physical evidence can support multiple, intertwined stories. The seismic factor humbles the investigation. It reminds us that the monument's survival is itself a miracle. It has endured not just the passage of time, but the active hostility of its environment, an environment that includes the very planet it sits upon. This transforms the Sphinx from a passive relic into a dynamic participant in a geological drama, a stone witness to the immense, slow-motion forces that shape continents. Its weathered face is not just a record of age, but a testament to resilience, a narrative of endurance written in the language of cracks, fissures, and stubborn, enduring form. The ultimate answer to this mystery might lie in a single, definitive number. While geologists read the story of water in stone, and astronomers calculate alignments with ancient stars, modern science offers a more direct promise: the ability to date the monument itself. This quest for a chronological fingerprint has led researchers to deploy some of the most advanced techniques in the archaeologist's toolkit. Yet the Sphinx guards its birth certificate with formidable skill. The fundamental challenge is the material. The Sphinx is not built from bricks or mortar that can be carbon dated. It is a geological formation, a piece of the Giza Plateau that was sculpted. Dating carved bedrock is one of science's most stubborn puzzles. You cannot simply point a device at the stone and get a readout of when it was shaped. The rock itself is millions of years old, its formation predating humanity by eons. The event we need to date is not the creation of the limestone, but the moment human tools first touched it, exposing fresh surfaces to the elements. To find that moment, scientists must look for clues trapped in the stone's relationship with time. One promising avenue involves the crusts that form on limestone in a desert environment. Over centuries, a thin skin of minerals called a patina or a weathering rind develops on the rock's surface. This crust incorporates trace elements from the atmosphere and groundwater. Researchers have proposed using uranium series dating on these crusts. This method measures the radioactive decay of uranium into thorium within the mineral layers. In theory, if you could sample the very base of the crust, the part that first formed on the freshly carved stone, you could determine when that surface was first exposed. However, the Sphinx's complex history of weathering, burial, and restoration makes this incredibly difficult. The original surface has been contaminated by wind-blown dust, salts, and moisture, and in many places, it is covered entirely by newer restoration stones. Taking a clean sample from an uncontested section of the original core body is a delicate, and so far, elusive task. Another approach looks not at the Sphinx itself, but at the materials used to save it. The thousands of limestone blocks added during ancient and modern restoration campaigns could, in principle, be dated. Techniques like thermoluminescence might be used on any pottery fragments or wind-blown sediments trapped behind these blocks when they were set in place, providing a date for that specific repair. While valuable, this only tells us when the Sphinx was fixed, not when it was first broken. It provides a minimum age, a line in the sand saying the monument was already ancient enough to need major work by, say, the time of the fourth, but it cannot reach back to its origin. These scientific endeavors highlight a poignant reality in the search for lost time. We have the tools to ask profound questions, but the subject of our inquiry, this silent giant of stone, resists easy interrogation. Each potential method encounters the same layered obstacles: the restorations that cover the original skin, the complex environmental history that has rewritten the stone's surface, and the sheer logistical and political challenges of conducting invasive testing on a World Heritage icon. The quest for a direct date thus becomes a kind of holy grail. It represents the dream of cutting through centuries of debate with one unambiguous result, a number that could confirm the monument weathered under a green Sahara or firmly anchor it to the age of the Pharaohs. This scientific pursuit, with all its limitations, underscores the profound nature of the mystery itself. It is not a lack of curiosity driving the uncertainty, but the immense depth of time we are trying to measure and the silent, stoic nature of the witness we are asking to speak. Until that day when a conclusive sample is ever analyzed, the Sphinx's true age remains a conversation between the stones, the stars, and our own relentless desire to know. Perhaps the answer lies not in a single birthplace, but in a slow migration of ideas across ancient landscapes. If the Sphinx's origins feel foreign to dynastic Egypt, we might look to its neighbors, to the early stirrings of civilization in other lands. To the east, in the Fertile Crescent of Mesopotamia, the world's first cities were rising around the same time as the proposed older Sphinx. The Sumerians were master builders, raising ziggurats to the heavens and carving intricate reliefs. Yet, while they depicted powerful beasts and hybrid creatures, the specific, monumental form of a lion with a human head does not appear in their early art. The cultural current seems to flow in a different direction. Closer to home, in the very desert that was once green, another fascinating piece of the puzzle emerges. At a site called Playa, deep in the Egyptian Sahara, archaeologists have uncovered the remains of a sophisticated pastoral society that thrived over 7,000 years ago. These people constructed a complex stone calendar circle, aligning megaliths with the summer solstice and other celestial events. This proves that well before the first pharaoh, groups in the region possessed a precise, working knowledge of astronomy and were capable of organizing stone on a significant scale. The people of Playa were not pyramid builders, but their existence shows a pre-dynastic cultural landscape ripe with intellectual curiosity and technical skill. Could knowledge from such a group, or from interactions with distant Mesopotamian traders, have seeded the idea for a monument like the Sphinx? This is the theory of cultural diffusion. It proposes that concepts, symbols, and techniques can travel, carried by the movement of people, goods, and stories along trade routes. Imagine a small cadre of master architects or astronomer priests from a more advanced region arriving in the Nile Valley. They would bring with them not just practical skills for moving massive stone, but a cosmology, a set of beliefs about lions as solar symbols and guardians. They might find a receptive audience among the local chieftains of a pre-dynastic Proto-Egypt, a society growing in complexity and eager to express its power in a permanent, awe-inspiring way. This visiting group could have provided the blueprint, the technical know-how, and the sacred justification for a project that the local population then executed with their own labor and resources. The Sphinx, in this view, becomes a collaborative work, a fusion of imported vision and local effort. This offers a compelling middle ground. It allows for the Sphinx to be older than traditional Egyptology accepts, born from a pre-pharaonic culture that was in contact with broader currents of Neolithic innovation. yet it avoids the need for a full-blown, advanced lost civilization within Egypt itself. The genius behind the monument could have been a borrowed spark, one that found perfect fuel in the unique spiritual and political climate of the emerging Nile Valley. The lion-human hybrid itself supports this idea of a traveling symbol. While the Great Sphinx is the most famous, the motif appears in other ancient cultures, often separated by vast distances. From the winged human-headed lions of Assyria to the mythical creatures of Greek lore, the fusion of human intelligence with leonine power seems to be a universal archetype. A shared human answer to the question of ultimate authority and protection. The Egyptian version may be the most monumental and enduring, but its conceptual roots might stretch into a common, ancient well of symbolism. So we are left with a tapestry of possibilities, where knowledge was not invented in isolation, but woven across continents and centuries. The Sphinx could stand as a testament to that early, interconnected world, a moment when a powerful idea from beyond the horizon found its ultimate expression in the stone of the Giza Plateau. Waiting for a future kingdom to claim it as its own, the vast, green savanna was a world in motion. Herds migrated with the rains, and the people who followed them navigated a landscape without borders, guided by the sun, the stars, and the most prominent features on the horizon. In such a world, a monument the size of the Sphinx would have been more than a sculpture, it would have been a beacon. If its earliest form dates to that wetter epoch, its purpose may have been profoundly practical long before it became sacred. This massive, leonine shape, carved from the very bones of the plateau, would have been visible for miles in every direction. For nomadic groups traversing the grasslands, it would have served as an unmovable meeting point, a giant signpost in a world of shifting seasons. Its location is key, sitting at what geologists believe was the edge of a large, seasonal lake that filled the Nile Valley during the African humid period. This was not a random site, but a strategic one, positioned at the junction of water, land, and likely ancient travel routes. The Sphinx would have marked a place of life, a reliable spot where water gathered, game came to drink, and scattered communities could converge. In this light, the monument starts as something communal, a project born from collective need rather than royal decree. Imagine generations of early people returning to this same lakeshore season after season. They might have initially revered a natural rock outcrop that vaguely resembled a crouching animal, a formation already shaped by wind and water. Over centuries, perhaps they began to enhance it, clearing debris, accentuating its form with simple tools, slowly transforming the natural into the intentional. This would not have been a single construction project with a master architect, but a cumulative act of landscape modification, a tradition passed down. Each generation might add to the work, deepening a groove here, clearing a line there, gradually revealing the giant slumbering within the stone. This slow evolution makes the impossible scale of the Sphinx feel more accessible. It becomes not a sudden miracle of a lost civilization, but a testament to persistent, intergenerational effort. The lion's shape itself holds deep, primal power in such a setting. To people living alongside real lions, the most powerful hunters on the savanna, the image was one of ultimate strength and guardianship. By shaping the rock into this form, they were perhaps claiming that protective power for their own gathering place, or honoring the spirit of the land that sustained them. Over countless generations, as stories were told around fires at its base, the enhanced rock formation would have accumulated layers of meaning. What began as a practical landmark would slowly become a sacred one, a place where the community felt watched over, where rituals of gratitude or petition were performed. This perspective offers a bridge between the deep time suggested by the Geology and the later Pharaonic adoption. When the climate finally shifted and the desert began to reclaim the land, the Great Lake receded and the nomadic way of life changed. But the monument remained, a lonely sentinel overlooking a drying world. Centuries later, when a new, settled civilization emerged along the permanent Nile, their explorers would have come across this colossal, weathered lion. Its original builders and their way of life were long forgotten, lost to the sands of time, yet the power of the place was undeniable. To the early Egyptians, finding this giant from a lost age, they would have seen not a communal landmark but a divine one. They interpreted its enduring presence as evidence of the gods or of legendary ancestors. Its solar alignment, whether intentional from the start or a fortunate coincidence, fit perfectly into their own developing religion of the sun god Ra. So they adopted it, claimed it, and in the ultimate act of cultural reinterpretation, they recarved its head into the likeness of their king. The Sphinx's journey from a practical guidepost for migrating herders to a symbol of pharaonic divinity is a story of memory and reinvention. It suggests that the most enduring monuments are not always born from a single grand vision, but can grow from the slow, collective heartbeat of humanity itself. With each era hearing its rhythm and adding its own verse to an ancient stone song, this is far more than a simple argument over dates. The battle over the Sphinx's age strikes at the very heart of how we tell the human story. Our textbooks present a clean, upward line, a narrative of gradual progress from simple hunter-gatherers to complex, literate civilizations like Egypt. This linear timeline is a cornerstone of modern archaeology, a framework that organizes discoveries and defines entire careers. To suggest the Great Sphinx predates that timeline by thousands of years is to pull a foundational block from that carefully constructed structure. It challenges the originality of one of humanity's most celebrated cultures, implying that the brilliant spark of Egyptian civilization may not have been a unique dawn, but an ember rekindled from a much older fire. The resistance to this idea is profound, and it extends beyond mere skepticism over evidence. For a field built on meticulous stratification and cultural context, accepting a monument without a matching civilization is like finding a single perfect sentence in a language for which no alphabet has ever been discovered. It disrupts the entire cataloging system. An older Sphinx would demand a painful, wholesale paradigm shift, a rewriting of not just chapters, but the basic plot of early human history. Decades of research, academic reputations, and deeply held understandings are woven into the existing narrative. To change it is not a simple edit, it is an intellectual revolution, and revolutions are rarely welcomed by those who built the existing order. This makes the Sphinx more than an archaeological site, it is of ideas. On one side stands the established model of cultural evolution, defended by a wealth of contextual evidence and rigor. On the other side stands an interdisciplinary challenge, using the hard data of geology and the precise clock of astronomy to point toward a profound anomaly. The stakes are the story we tell ourselves about who we are and where we came from. Is human history a steady, knowable climb, or does it contain lost peaks, entire plateaus of achievement that were swept away by time and cataclysm, leaving only cryptic summits like Giza? The debate matters because the answer changes our perception of human potential, resilience, and memory. It asks whether we are the first to build wonders or merely the latest to inherit them. That stone giant has long since escaped the desert sands to live in our collective dreams. Long before modern debates over water erosion, the Sphinx had already captured the global imagination, becoming a symbol not just of Egypt, but of all ancient mystery. Its enigmatic gaze seems to invite speculation, serving as a blank screen onto which every era projects its own fears, fantasies, and theories. This transformation from archaeological site to cultural icon began centuries ago. When Napoleon's army arrived in Egypt in 1798, they were awestruck by the monument. Legend, likely exaggerated, claims his troops used the Sphinx's face for cannon practice, a story that speaks to its perceived power as a target for a modern, conquering force. The real impact was the wave of scholars and artists he brought with him, whose detailed drawings and descriptions sent the Sphinx's image flooding into European living rooms for the first time. Igniting a public obsession with the Orient and its hidden secrets. This fascination only grew with the dawn of cinema. Hollywood quickly recognized the Sphinx's dramatic potential. It became a fixed star in the constellation of adventure, a mandatory backdrop for tales of exploration and danger. From early silent serials to lavish Technicolor epics, the Sphinx loomed behind heroes and villains, its stony face implying untold ages and lost wisdom. It was no longer just a statue, it was a portal, a guardian of something precious and perilous. This cinematic role seamlessly bled into more speculative realms. The 20th century saw the rise of the ancient astronaut hypothesis, popularized by books and television shows, which proposed that monuments like the Sphinx were evidence of extraterrestrial visitation. In this narrative, the statue's possible great age and mysterious origin were not puzzles for archaeologists, but clues left by star travelers. Similarly, its imposing presence made it a natural focal point for various prophecies and New Age beliefs, seen as an energy vortex or a keeper of apocalyptic timetables. While mainstream science often dismisses these ideas as fringe fantasy, their cultural power is undeniable. They thrive precisely because the official story feels incomplete, because the questions the Sphinx asks are so much bigger than the answers we have. This popular fascination, for all its wild flights, performs a vital, if unintended, service. It keeps the mystery alive in the public mind. It ensures that the question of the Sphinx's origins never becomes a dusty, academic footnote, but remains a living, breathing puzzle that anyone can ponder. Every new documentary, every controversial book, every online theory fuels a widespread curiosity about humanity's deep past. This creates a powerful, diffuse pressure on the scientific and archaeological establishment. It means that any new scrape of evidence, a radar anomaly, a fresh geological paper, or even a bold new hypothesis, is instantly amplified around the world. The Sphinx's iconic status guarantees an audience, demanding that experts continually engage, refine their arguments, and push for better answers. In this way, the monument's journey into myth has become part of its own scientific story. The global spotlight it commands helps secure funding for new surveys, encourages interdisciplinary approaches, and reminds researchers that their work answers a profound and popular hunger to understand our place in time. The Sphinx, then, exists in two parallel realms, the physical world of limestone and erosion, and the intangible world of symbol and story. Each realm feeds the other. The stone reality sparks the wild stories, and the hunger of those stories, in turn, drives us to look ever closer at the stone, hoping to find, at last, the truth behind the legend. The evidence does not point to a single, irrefutable fact, but to a compelling pattern of questions. We have listened to geologists describe the story of rainwater written in limestone, followed astronomers as they mapped the statue's gaze onto a sky from 10,000 years ago, and sifted through ancient texts that speak of guardians at the horizon, Each line of inquiry, on its own, can be debated. The water erosion could be from rare storms or chemical weathering. The astronomical alignment might be a coincidence. The historical silence could simply mean the records are lost. Yet when you stand back and view all these threads together, a picture begins to form that the standard timeline cannot easily contain. It is the weight of the anomalies, their persistent convergence, that challenges the simpler story. The official narrative asks us to accept a series of uncomfortable mismatches, that the same civilization built monuments with two different weathering signatures, that master sculptors created a statue with a glaring proportional error, and that the greatest builders of their age left no contemporary claim to their mightiest sculpture. The alternative narrative, while far from proven, offers a different kind of elegance. It proposes a single, sweeping explanation that ties these loose ends into a coherent whole. Imagine the Sphinx not as a sudden creation, but as a rediscovery, a monument from a deep and forgotten age, already ancient and weathered when the first pharaohs walked the plateau. They would have encountered this colossal lion, its meaning obscured by time, yet its power undeniable. So they did what cultures have always done with powerful relics: they adopted it. They reshaped its head to reflect their own king, built their temples from its stones, and wove its silent presence into their new mythology. This story of adoption and modification, rather than outright invention, gracefully accounts for the mismatched head, the shared erosion with the megalithic temples, and the profound silence in the early historical record. It transforms the Sphinx from a paradox into a palimpsest, a monument with multiple authors across vast stretches of time. There is no smoking gun, no inscribed plaque from a pre-dynastic king. But the preponderance of clues suggests our history might be deeper and more layered than a single timeline can hold. This possibility does not diminish the achievements of dynastic Egypt, it recontextualizes them. It presents the pyramid builders not as isolated geniuses, but as inheritors, standing on the shoulders of giants from a world that had already passed into legend. They saw a mystery in stone and made it their own, ensuring its silent question would echo down not just as a symbol of their power, but as a riddle for every age to come. A single, weathered monument could rewrite our entire story. If the Sphinx truly is a relic from a time before Egypt, before the pyramids, before history as we know it, then the ground shifts beneath our feet. This is not just about moving a date on a timeline. It is about reimagining the arc of human achievement itself. Our textbooks paint a clear picture, a steady climb from simple hunter-gatherers to the first great civilizations along rivers like the Nile and the Tigris. This narrative places the birth of complex society, with its monumental architecture and sophisticated symbolism, around 5,000 years ago. But a Sphinx built 7, 8, or even 10,000 years ago shatters that comfortable ascent. It means that the human impulse to carve meaning into the world on a colossal scale, to align our creations with the cosmos, and to project power and belief into stone, emerged not at the dawn of civilization, but in the deep twilight of prehistory. This single anomaly forces a staggering possibility that what we call civilization may not be a unique, linear invention, but a recurring phenomenon. It suggests our history might be punctuated by cycles, periods where cultures rose to profound heights, developed intricate knowledge, and then, for reasons we can only guess, faded from the record. They might have been undone by the very climate shifts that carved the Sphinx's body, by rising seas swallowing coastal cities, or by social fragmentation in the face of a changing world. Their greatest works, built to last for eternity, would be the only witnesses, standing as lonely riddles in landscapes later, inhabited by new peoples with no memory of the builders. This view transforms the Sphinx from a statue into a potential survivor, a fragment of a lost cycle, a piece of a puzzle from an epoch whose name we do not even know. Such a perspective is both humbling and exhilarating. It humbles our modern sense of primacy, reminding us that the pharaohs themselves might have been latecomers, inheriting a sacred plateau already marked by giants. It challenges the notion that progress is a straight line we alone are drawing. Yet it is also exhilarating, for it speaks to a profound and enduring human potential. It suggests that the capacity for greatness, for organizing vast endeavors and seeking communion with the universe through art and science, is not a recent development, but a deep-seated trait within us. Our ancestors, in epochs now silent, may have looked at the same stars, asked the same fundamental questions, and answered them in stone with a mastery we are only beginning to recognize. Ultimately, the mystery of the Sphinx is a gift of uncertainty. It keeps the door to the past slightly ajar, allowing in a draft of wonder. It reminds us that history is not merely the story written in ink and clay, but also the one whispered by weathered stone and encoded in the slow dance of constellations. Our written records are but the latest chapter in a much longer saga, a saga whose earlier pages might be buried under deserts or submerged beneath seas. The Great Sphinx, in its silent vigil, does not give us answers. Instead, it offers a far more valuable thing, a permanent question, an invitation to look deeper, to wonder wider, and to remember that the human story is likely far richer, more resilient, and more mysterious than we have ever dared to believe. The Great Sphinx of Giza stands as a silent question mark carved in stone, its riddles more profound than any mythological beast could pose. It does not whisper its age, it simply presents the evidence, a body weathered by forgotten rains and a gaze locked on stars from a different epoch. Our search for its birthday is really a search for our own, a quest to understand when the human spirit first felt compelled to leave a mark of this scale, to build a dialogue with eternity. The official timeline offers a clear and comforting story, one that fits neatly within the grand narrative of the pharaohs. Yet the persistent whispers from geology and astronomy suggest a different possibility, that the roots of our ambition may run thousands of years deeper into the soil of time. Both stories cannot be true, and so we are left to weigh the evidence, to listen to the quiet debate between the stones and the history books. This is not a failure of knowledge, but its very essence, the beautiful, restless engine of discovery. Whether this monument is 4,500 years old or a staggering 12,000, its true power lies not in a date, but in what it represents, humanity's enduring drive to create meaning, to seek alignment with the cosmos, and to build a legacy that outlasts the rise and fall of kingdoms. The evidence for an older origin, while controversial, is a vital invitation. It asks us to stay curious, to keep questioning the stories we think we know, and to remain open to the possibility that our past is far more layered and mysterious than any single timeline can contain. As the desert sands continue their slow, endless dance, shifting over the plateau grain by grain, so too might our understanding shift with each new discovery, each fresh look at the old stones. The search for the Sphinx's age is ultimately a search for our own origins, a reminder that history is not a closed book, but an ongoing conversation across the. So we leave you with that final, silent gaze. What do you believe lies behind it? Is it the proud face of a pharaoh from the age of pyramids, or the timeless watchfulness of a guardian from a world lost to memory? The stones hold their secret close. Share your thoughts in the comments below, join the conversation that has spanned centuries. Subscribe for more journeys into history's deepest mysteries, and remember, the past is never as simple as it seems.